Hello, Contrarians listeners, watchers, subscribers. Here we are with the latest Contrarians warm-up. We are on the second half of our Bogdanovich films journey, and that means that we have reached the Cat's Meow drama, a mystery, depending on who you ask, and Kirsten Dunst's vehicle, maybe, right? She's front and center. And
Yeah.
this is pre-Spider-Man, so I think that you could still see it as a building block into the career that Kirsten Dunst would develop. So there's that, and then of course it's Peter Bogdanovich making a movie about old Hollywood. That's not surprising. So it's fresh on the Tomatometer, a nice return to form, according to a lot of critics. So that means that we are going to pick it apart in Contrarian's Corner on the on the show, on the podcast, and then in real talk, we'll tell you how we really feel. But here on this warm up, we are going to give you some more Rotten Tomatoes quotes. We're going to give you some trivia, and we're going to put Josh Gad in the middle of this thing in the Josh Gad Minute. So, Alex, let's get started. Let's do these fresh quotes from Rotten Tomatoes. I'm going to start with Jonathan Rosenbaum from the Chicago Reader, who says, "The strongest achievement of the Cat's Meow may be the performances, especially those of Kirsten Dunst, Davies, Edward Herman, Hearst, and even Eddie Izzard, Chaplin." Even Eddie Izzard.
Yeah, it seemed pretty surprised by that. I mean, he had experience up until this point. Nothing too crazy. I mean, he was in Mystery Men. But
Really? Is he one of the mystery men?
He plays Tony P. I've never actually seen Mystery Men.
Oh, it's. I think it's funny. Probably not as funny as it should have been. But it's been a long time since I watched it. I don't remember him. I know, Hank Azaria, William H. Macy, Ben Stiller.
I know Greg Kinnear's in it because I remember watching some movie he did on the red carpet. Some guy just wanted to ask him about Mystery Men, and he seemed very embarrassed by it. So,
Janine Garofalo, Jeffrey Rush. I can think of all these names. Pee Wee Herman, I think, is in it.
Paul Rubens, yeah.
Yeah. No Eddie Izzard. Maybe he's just in the background. But I know Eddie Izzard from his stand-up. That's what I knew him from when the first time I watched this movie. And I still, when I think of him, I don't think of him as an actor. I think of him as a stand-up comedian. A good one. I mean, once upon a time, Alex, I don't know if you remember this, but they had, I think, all his major stand-up specials on Netflix. And you could just go to sleep.
Sounds right.
Listening to Eddie Izzard ramble on about whatever. He had like a routine about monkeys that was really funny. I wish I could remember it in detail, but I just remember him like acting like a monkey. And then there were long stretches of his routine that were in French, I think, and they were not subtitled. So you just had to trust that what he was saying was funny.
Make it up in your own mind.
Yeah, I mean, he was very physical about it. So I could tell that he was being funny. But anyway, it is a good comedian. A good Chaplin, I wouldn't have thought of it, and I think, like we mentioned in the episode, the biggest problem anybody playing Chaplin will have from here until the end of the world is that Robert Downey Jr. played Chaplin.
You established that, yes.
Have you seen like any clips or anything of RDJ playing Chaplin?
Mm-hmm. I've never seen the whole movie, but I've seen clips of it.
He is pretty uncanny as far as capturing the physicality of Chaplin. And so, well, if you've seen that, then Eddie Izzard just looks like Eddie Izzard with Chaplin hairdo.
Yeah, and it's a bit of a different approach too to portraying Chaplin on film here. But yeah, he's good. I mean, Kirsten Dunst was already an established actress. She wasn't like a box office draw in the way she became after this. But yeah, I don't think it's the fact that he doesn't measure up to her directly isn't a comment on him.
And I think that's the other thing, that he is playing the most well-known character. Everybody else, I mean, most of the cast is playing people that existed in real life, but Eddie Izzard is the only one that anybody would know, right? Like everybody has an idea of what Chaplin is supposed to be like. So then you see him and like, that's Eddie Izzard. Like Marion Davies, if you're a film buff, I guess you know who she is and what she's supposed to be like. But otherwise, you just take whatever Kirsten Dunst is giving you. Same thing with Hearst, Tom Ince, everybody else. But anyway, yes, I agree. Good performances. Next, Mark Dushik from Mark Reviews Movies says, contains the same kind of intelligent class observation that was featured in Gosford Park. You ever watch Gosford Park, Alex?
Mm-mm.
It was an Oscars darling, whatever year that was. That was Robert Altman. Man, it might have been, no, it wasn't his last movie, but I think it was nominated for Best Picture. That one is a murder mystery. Unlike The Cat's Meow, which tries to tell you that it's a murder mystery, but it's not a mystery at all because you see everything that happens. Gosford Park, it's like this big mansion, and there's like the rich people, and then there's the servants, and somebody gets killed, and then it's just like a murder mystery. But you know, you have the class, you know, between. It's kind of like what's the show? Downton Abbey, I guess. Before
Okay.
Downton Abbey was a thing. I don't know that I see the comparison with Gosford Park, you know, here, because the Cat's Meow, they're all rich. There's no lower class that other than the people maybe watching the movie. Did you feel the difference in class between, I guess, maybe Jennifer Tilly?
No, it's we talk about Titanic several times in the episode, and there's not the attempt at differentiating classes so obviously in this as there is in something like Titanic.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you can see the aspiring actors as the struggling class. But in the end,
But everyone like hangs out together. It's not like
yeah.
they have like separate parties and stuff.
Yeah.
Like there's a separate party when like drugs are involved and shit. The liberals go to hang out, but you know.
When it comes down to it, everybody dances Charleston on the same
Yeah.
dance floor.
It's
And
true.
they swap partners, and it's all great. Next, Stephen Himes from Film Snobs says Bogdanovich's bittersweet elegy to all the girls he's loved before. We do bring it up a little bit in the episode, but old P-Bog, well known, infamous for starting relationships with actresses he was working with, and then this movie is in big part about that, about Chaplin just being infatuated with Marion Davis, and that leading to somebody's undoing, maybe many people's undoings.
And also the issue with that being that he impregnated Lita Gray also.
Right. Yeah. Even before the movie starts, Chaplin's already in trouble.
His reputation precedes him, much like Peter Bogdanovich.
Yes. The modern Chaplin. We are going to close with Philip Wunsch from Dallas Morning News, who says, a great looking movie that entertains without requiring empathy. And that's another big talking point here. The fact that it's difficult to find anybody in this movie sympathetic because they're all pretty bad people.
We talk about that at length in the episode. My thought on that being that no one wins in the end of this movie. No one's rewarded. So it's not like
Jennifer Tilly. I mean,
well, that's like I said, the Kaiser Soze moment in the movie where she's revealed to be the worst of them all in some aspects. But that's kind of on the nose. That's kind of the conclusion we come to. It's still entertaining and fun, and you laugh at parts of it, despite the fact that there's really no likable characters, that you're not rooting for anyone per se.
I forgot to ask you. I usually do whenever we're tackling one of these movies where everybody's a bad person or everybody is so morally compromised that you can't really align yourself with anyone. When you were watching the movie, did you have any sort of hope for the outcome? Like where you're like, I hope Chaplin wins her over, or I hope that Cary Elves gets his business deal.
Lives,
survives.
No. This is. I was gonna say it was in line with being like a vibe movie, but I also call Last Picture Show a vibe movie, and I'm kind of pulling for people in that movie. I have hope for some of those characters. Here, yeah, not really. I was kind of just watching what happened and kind of taking it in. There are likable characters in some of his other movies that you would say kind of have a vibe similar to this. There are people you root for, even if what they're doing is kind of wrong. Case in point, Ben Gazzara, Audrey Hepburn, and they all laughed.
Yeah.
You know, plenty of heartbreak that comes along with Last Picture Show because you want the best for these characters. With this, I was just like, man, this boat could hit an iceberg and all these people drown, and it wouldn't be like too much of a tragedy. But again, to our previous review, it doesn't take from the enjoyment of it and the fun of watching it.
Yeah, I agree. And actually, I posed this question to the audience. Anybody listening, can you have a vibe movie where you don't like any of the characters? Or does that get in the way of the vibe? You know, because the idea is, yeah, you like spending time with these characters. Do you like spending time with the people in the Cat's Meow?
Who do you root for in Llewyn Davis? That seems to be a movie we always come back to when we talk about one of our all-time favorites between the two of us, and two, a vibe movie. So who do you root for in that?
I mean, I have to admit, I root for Llewyn. He's an asshole, but I want him to succeed. I want him to get that record deal, and I want him to figure shit out.
He's such a self-saboteur, though, man.
I know, but that's,
I root for F. Murray Abraham. I just want him to have a good day.
But that's not fair, because you don't see him until the very end. So you're not rooting for, maybe on rewatch.
I kid, yeah. I at this point, every time I rewatch that movie, I do just laugh when he just. I don't see any money in this, or any money here, however he words it. For those who listen to the podcast, or if this is your first time, Good Time. It's one of my favorite modern movies. That's a vibe movie through and through.
Is it a vibe movie? It's so plot dependent. It's like this thing happens and then this thing happens.
It's a vibe movie in the sense of like you're watching it. Well, I mean, when chemicals are involved, it can definitely be a vibe movie.
Oh, well, anything could be a vibe movie. Natural Born Killers is a vibe movie. If you,
it is to some people.
Yeah.
High schoolers predominantly.
All right. Well, hit us up with your vibe movies. And what do you intoxicate yourself with before you vibe? It's time for trivia, Alex, but that's not accurate, actually. It's time for the Josh Gad Minute before we go to trivia. I mean, it's a ship. I'm assuming we're putting Gad in the ship. He's not going to be one of the characters from before they board. He's not going to be like the driver or the...
Chaplin's driver, yeah, that shows up.
No.
I mean, you could go bold and cast him as Chaplin.
Oh, my God.
I mean, that would be a big one, but with that, you get Gad dancing and gallivanting around and being promiscuous.
Yeah.
Shit, man. You could have him as Eins, which I think adds a different level of sympathy to the character when he dies, because it's like, Olaf, no! Or gets shot at least. I don't know who else besides that has a big enough role.
Like, you wouldn't be able to take him seriously as Hearst, right?
No. Too short. Ed Herman's a tall man. No. Yeah, his presence... I mean this as a compliment to Kirsten Dunst and not an insult to Josh Gad, but like if those two were on screen, like she would like dwarf him.
Yes.
In terms of like star power. And not to say that Kirsten Dunst in the history of her career isn't a bigger star than Edward Herman, but just like his physical presence, like it makes a big difference.
Right.
And you believe the interactions. You also believe that she's kind of scared of him due to his power, both, business-wise and I imagine physically. But
yeah, Dunst and Gad would look like siblings. It would be weird.
Yes. Yeah. But he can be a little shit sometimes. So I think the idea of casting him as Eins is probably the way to go. It's honestly between that and Chaplin. And I guess take your pick with that. But for me personally, I think him, like, he may, not to discredit Carrie Ells, but Gad might be able to have a little bit more comedy in those scenes where he's poking and prodding Hearst about like the very obvious affair that's going on in front of his nose. So I think there's potential there. Because otherwise, you just cast him in a role where he has like 3 or 4 lines.
Yeah,
and just kind of a background character.
He can be one of the fixers, but no, yeah. That's not. I mean, you have Josh Gad in this enclosed space. I like the idea of the Chaplin recast because he doesn't look anything like Chaplin, and so you're already telling people we're not even gonna try.
This is Charleston also.
Yeah, I mean he's a dancer. He can dance, but you know what I mean. Like the problem with the, and I like Eddie Izzard. I think
Blanchett playing Bob Dylan, baby.
Yeah, there you go. It's like this is like a very personal interpretation. I like Eddie Izzard in this movie, just in case it's coming across as me not liking him, but. Again, going back to it, the problem is that he is trying to look like Chaplin. And, but if you cast Josh Gad, you're not even trying. So that part of it is not a factor anymore. Now it's just about the spirit of Chaplin. And I think that he's a clown, so he can do it.
Yeah.
All right, there you go. Chaplin or Eins, you take your pick. But, which way we lean, each of us.
Going
Let's
bold
go.
either way.
Yes. Let's go to trivia, Alex.
First, I'll just knock out the standards. Locarno Film Festival was where this movie premiered on August 3rd of 2001. It was released in the United States on April 12th of 2002, and in the United Kingdom on June 4th of 2004. Had a budget of $7 million for a box office return of under $4 million. We go into kind of some of the financials and also the box office history of Peter Bogdanovich in the episode itself. And, we talk in the episode about some of Peter Bogdanovich's motivation for making this and some of kind of the ideas that went into the screenplay and whatnot. In lieu of direct trivia from the film, though, I want to focus on Thomas Heinz's death. And then I also pulled an article that touches on kind of both the movie and the death that was released at the time of the film in the LA Times. So we'll start just kind of recounting the death of Thomas Heinz as described by our wonderful friends at Wikipedia. There's a picture of the yacht, the Juanita on here. Heinz's death at the age of 44 has been the subject of much speculation and scandal with rumors of murder, mystery, and jealousy. Sounds like the fucking copy
Tagline
for the movie, yeah. The official cause of death was heart failure, and while witnesses, including his widow, Nell, corroborate that his medical condition brought about his death, rumors and sensationalism continue decades later, fueled by the 2001 release of the film The Cat's Meow. In late 1924, Heinz and W.R. Hearst had been negotiating a deal under which Hearst's Cosmopolitan Productions would lease Heinz's studio. On Saturday, November 15th, Hearst visited Heinz's Diez Dorados estate at 1051 Benedict Canyon Drive and invited him for a weekend cruise on his yacht, the Juanita. Throws me off. We talk about the episodes, either Juanita or Onita. I couldn't remember from the film how they pronounce it, but it's the Wonders thing. It's spelled Oneida. So
I thought you were gonna say that it's like the hash browns and all sorts of like frozen potatoes. Do they have a brand that are like, is it Oneida, or
I don't know. You must eat more frozen hash browns than I do. The Juanita, the Oneaters. This was to honor Heinz's birthday and to work out the details of the Cosmopolitan deal. According to Heinz's widow, Nell, Heinz took a train to San Diego where he joined the other guests the following morning. At dinner that Sunday night, the group celebrated his birthday, but afterwards, he suffered an acute bout of indigestion due to his consumption of salted almonds and champagne, both forbidden as he had peptic ulcers. Yeah, man, if you have an ulcer, that shit's just going to rip you apart.
Not the almonds, the alcohol, right? Or is it the combination?
Yeah, like salt and anything carbonated is just going to... Accompanied by Dr. Goodman, a licensed though non-practicing physician, he traveled by train to Del Mar, where he was taken to a hotel and given medical treatment by a second doctor and a nurse. He then summoned Nell and his personal physician, Dr. Ida Cowan Glasgow, his eldest son William accompanying them. The group traveled by train to Los Angeles to this Los Angeles home where he died. Nell said that Heinz had been treated for chest pains caused by angina, but years later his son William became a physician and said that his father's illness resembled thrombosis, formation of a blood clot inside a blood vessel. Some of the story reads, I was just thinking of Mr. Burns, where he was transferred to Springfield Regional, where he was pronounced dead. He was then transferred to a better hospital, and his condition was upgraded to alive. That's just the non-practicing physician. That's what I was expecting to come from that.
I found the hash browns, Alex, by the way, just to close that loop. It's Ore-Ida, or Oreida, or Orelda. It's not Hearst's ship. That's the main thing.
I like Denny's hash browns. That's where I get mine. However, several conflicting... Oh, nope, skipped ahead there. Dr. Glasgow signed the death certificate, citing heart failure as a cause of death. The front page of the Wednesday morning LA Times supposedly sensationalized the story. Quote, movie producer shot on Hearst yacht. But the headlines vanished in the evening edition. On November 20, the Times published Heinz's obituary, citing heart failure as a cause of death, with his failing health from an automobile accident 2 years earlier. A month later, the New York Times reported that San Diego District Attorney had announced that Einstein's death was caused by heart failure and no further investigation was necessary. This is kind of outlined at the end of the film.
That's the only moment where this has intersected with the movie.
Both he and his wife were practicing thespians. Thespians. Jesus. It's late. Corey, take this again. Both Einstein and his wife were practicing theosophists who preferred cremation and had arranged for it long before his death. While rumors prevailed that Nell suddenly departed the country after her husband's death, she actually left for Europe about 7 months later in July of 1925. However, several conflicting stories circulated about the incident, often revolving around a claim that Hearst shot Einstein in the head after mistaking him for Charlie Chaplin. Chaplin's valet, Toriichi Kono, claimed to have seen Einstein when he came ashore via stretcher in San Diego. So again, now we're getting into the actual movie. Kono told his wife that his head was bleeding from a bullet wound. The story quickly spread among Japanese domestic workers throughout Beverly Hills. Charles Lederer, the nephew of Hearst's longtime partner Marion Davies, told a similar story to Orson Welles. We get into this a bit more in the episode. Who in turn told Peter Bogdanovich, the director of the Cat's Meow. Eleanor Glenn, who was president aboard the Juanita, told Eleanor Boardman that everyone aboard the yacht had been sworn to secrecy about the events, which would indicate more than a death by natural causes. Contrary to these accounts, during Einstein's funeral, the Los Angeles Times reported that his casket would remain open for 1 hour, quote, to afford friends and studio employees to pass for one last glimpse of the man they loved and respected, with no witnesses ever mentioning a bullet wound. His body was cremated on November 21st in the Hollywood Forever Cemetery, and the ashes returned to his family on Christmas Eve of 1924, who reportedly scattered them at sea. Hearst movie columnist Luella Parsons, this is Jennifer Tilly in the film, her name also figured into the scandal, with some speculating that she had been aboard during the reported shooting. Supposedly, after the affair, Hearst gave her a lifetime contract and expanded her syndication. However, other sources show that Parsons did not gain her position with Hearst as part of, quote, hush money, but had been the motion picture editor of Hearst's own New York American in December of 1923, and her contract was signed a year before Einstein's death. It's pretty intense to sign a lifetime contract to anyone for anything.
Yeah. And
there's a very famous pro wrestling documentary that covers this subject called Hitman Hart Wrestling with Shadows that led to like one of the, if not the greatest blow up in the history of that industry.
I also think that you can falsify records. Now I sound like one of those true crime people.
Here we go.
And I don't mean to, but I'm just saying that it's hard to say without going into a deep dive, right? How much of the movie is like, well, it could have happened, right? And it's like, who are you to say that it didn't happen this way? It was like, well, there's usually like a series of facts that would instantly disprove this sort of thing. Them saying that she had signed a contract like a year prior to Einstein's death, that just sounds like something that Hearst could have made up. I mean,
yes, this isn't JFK we're talking about. There's not like documents or video footage that people can actually like bring into the discussion to defend their kind of, at times what seem very out there points. This is all just, it's literally all conjecture. Another story circulated that Hearst provided Nell with a trust fund just before she left for Europe that paid off, and that Hearst paid off Einstein's mortgage of his Chateau Elise apartment building in Hollywood. However, Nell was left a very wealthy woman, and the Chateau Elise was an apartment she had already owned and had built on the grounds where Einstein's estate once stood. Years later, Hearst spoke to a journalist about the rumor that he had murdered Einstein. Not only am I innocent of this Einstein murder, he said, so is everyone else. Nell herself was increasingly frustrated over the rumors surrounding her husband's death and remarked, do you think I would have done nothing if I suspected that my husband had been the victim of foul play on anyone's part? Still, the myth of his death has overshadowed his reputation as a pioneering filmmaker and his role in the growth of the film industry. His studio was soon sold after he died. His final film, Enticement, a romance set in the French Alps, was released posthumously in 1925.
How wild is it, Alex, to have those types of conversations where people are telling you, "Hey, are you guilty of this murder?"
You know how fucking crazy that is? Like, that's the way shit was in the 20s and 30s, and you just could talk to someone and be like, "Tell me, did you kill them?"
And your response is like, "Of course not."
Yeah, that's, we're dealing with pretty um, shocking times for the way media covers things and the way people respond to media, but it still doesn't really match up to the idea that you could be sitting in front of someone that may have killed, and just been like, "Hey, man, did you do this? Like, what's the deal?" My friend down at the bar told me you shot this guy in the back of the head. Did that happen?
You go up to some woman and they're
And
like,
it's not
"Hey,"
just like some random dude off the street. You're
right.
talking to like one of the most powerful men in Hollywood.
And then Einstein's wife too. You just go up to her. It's like, "So, did you just stay quiet? Did he get murdered and you stay quiet?"
I mean, I know you say you love him, but what really happened?
Right? Did he pay you off? This is like, the that's how you know that America changed, because then it happened. Like, I'm thinking of the O.J. Simpson parallels. Like, one of those things where like uh, people had a pretty good idea of what had happened,
Yeah.
and it was not at all what the like official narrative was, at least for a while. And uh, the difference, I think, is just that even now, like if it all were to happen now, the way that technology has, that social media has taken over reporting everything, I think that we would just be overexposed to the details and the theories, as opposed to what it was like back then, where people were underexposed.
Yeah.
It's like Tom Ives dies, and then maybe 20 years later, somebody hears a story about what happened. It's just insane.
Talk about the episode, and we pull some quotes from him. Orson Welles was pretty convinced of what he believed happened, and that in turn is kind of handed down to Peter Bogdanovich, and this movie was made.
Yeah.
And brings us to our closing edition entry here on this warm up for the Cat's Meow. This is an article by Kevin Maynard from April 10th of 2002, titled "Can Fiction Solve a Real Mystery?" And this again from the Los Angeles Times. History has been written in whispers. This is the whisper told most often. The yacht you see belonged to William Randolph Hearst. So begins Victorian romance novelist Eleanor Glynn, played by Joanna Lumley, in The Cat's Meow, a new film about a weekend of murder and mayhem in the roaring 20s in which history and fiction collide. In the latest line of films that includes Ragtime, The Cradle Will Rock, and even Gosford Park, back to that,
Oh,
mingling fictional and non-fictional characters in a cultural context. Although such films often inspire renewed speculation about real events and people, they also can spark controversy, as is the case with A Beautiful Mind. Cat's Meow writer Stephen Peros learned this story that inspired his screenplay in 1988 when his New York University film professor, film historian William K. Everson, told the tale matter-of-factly to his class. We talk about in the episode, it's kind of fascinating that Peros brought this story when Bogdanovich read it. He was like, "How does he know this?"
right. It was like independently. There were two different branches.
Yeah, we were watching a silent film starring William S. Hart and produced by Thomas Ince, said Peros. And Everson said, "Of course you know how Ince died, don't you?" And a class of 18-year-olds said, "Well, no, not really." Everson proceeded to tell them the story of Ince's mysterious death in 1924 aboard the Juanita, a yacht belonging to Hearst, a newspaper mogul. According to Hearst newspaper, Ince, a pioneer of silent films who was celebrating his 43rd birthday on board, died of a heart attack. Elsewhere, the reported cause of death was acute indigestion. That his corpse was cremated further muddied the waters, resulting in an urban legend that he was murdered. One of the biggest rumors was that the Los Angeles Times, one of Hearst's competitors, published the headline "Movie Producer Shot on Hearst Yacht," in an early edition, but that it was killed in later editions because threats from Hearst. A search of Times archives turned up 2 stories that said Ince died the following Wednesday at his home, surrounded by family members. They cited, quote, heart disease, superinduced by indigestion attack, which the later story said occurred 2 days earlier aboard the yacht. Feel the need to call out because we do have on our Patreon, Julio and I discussing the Iron Claw, and that's one of the very murky parts of that movie, and also the story of the Von Erichs in general is that David Von Erich was cited as having died from acute enteritis, a stomach issue, and there's many people that challenge that as well.
Do you think Hearst shot him?
I do not think that W.R. Hearst shot him in the back of the head. He was one of the few Von Erichs that survived getting shot, so I don't feel good about that, but what are you going to do? For Peros, the story had instant appeal. Hearst had been immortalized already in Orson Welles' fictional celluloid masterpiece, Citizen Kane, but here was a tantalizing footnote. So I held on to the story, said Peros, and about a year out of college, I started researching the people that were supposedly on the yacht. If it wasn't already apparent that this was Hollywood Babylon material, consider the passenger list Peros gleaned from varying accounts. Among those aboard for the weekend boat trip from San Pedro to San Diego were fledgling gossip columnist Luella Parsons, played by Jennifer Tilly, Hearst's lover, actress Marion Davies, Kirsten Dunst, and Charles Chaplin, Eddie Izzard, rumored to also have been having an affair with Davies. This movie definitely takes that idea of a rumor and pushes it over the top.
Oh, yeah.
More than a murder is afoot in the Cat's Meow. It's also a movie about It's also about movers and shakers. Excuse me, desperate people looking for a piece of the Hollywood dream. A financially destitute Ince, Cary Elwes, attempts to forge a partnership with the Hearst Cosmopolitan Pictures, while Parsons schemes to leave her film critic job at Hearst's New York offices for a post on the West Coast. Such behind-the-scenes machinations form fascinating mosaics of the early 20th century American society and its tedious relationships to the arts. All right, what's your name? Kevin Maynard, let's calm down, dude. Such behind-the-scenes machinations form fascinating mosaics. Dude, he was typing that with one hand because the other one was below the desk.
Look, it's a Peter Bogdanovich picture, so he wanted to.
There's enough pretension involved. Can you dumb it down a shade? To varying degrees, seeking patronage is a definition of art, said Peros. Very fascinating statement.
We should put it on our Patreon.
Who knows whereof he speaks, having struggled for a decade in development hell to get his script onto the big screen. Artists need to eat to survive. They need money for their art. This is a film about the games played between the artist and the patron without passing judgment on either. The Cat's Meow is also about the high price of achieving fame and fortune, a subject its director Peter Bogdanovich knows all too intimately.
Yep.
32 years ago, Bogdanovich first heard the story of the Juanita from Wells. It's a great story I always wanted to tell, said Bogdanovich. It's about famous people who have this mythical level. Money, power, fame, and successes are things blown up to such a big deal. And as one who's had it and lost it, I know it firsthand.
Aw.
I know. Bogdanovich's own public image overshadowed his career, even though he directed 70s cinematic greats that include Targets, The Last Picture Show, and Paper Moon. The media paid more attention to his love affairs with leading lady Sybil Shepherd and later Playboy playmate Dorothy Stratton, who was shot dead by her estranged husband. I've been used as a character on at least 3 occasions that I know of, and in no case was there any care taken to try to make it remotely like me, said Bogdanovich. That said, Stephen and I and the actors spent enormous amounts of labor to try to be as close to what we felt was the truth as we could. Maybe it isn't absolutely what happened, but it seems pretty close based on all the different reports and different disguised reporters over the years.
Man.
It is, I think, a fair speculation. The life and time.
I did not expect him to double down on this probably happened. I thought he was going to say, look, this is a possibility, but the way
We're
that
just having fun.
Yeah. Have you seen Inglourious Bastards? Yeah, same thing.
The life and times of W.R. Hearst have been inextricably linked in the public mind to Wells's Charles Foster Kane. But although Hearst and Kane share some similar characteristics, both were big businessmen with egos that match their empires, there are huge disparities between the man and his mythical alter ego. Kane has always been one of my favorite films, and Wells one of my favorite filmmakers, says Peros. But as I researched Hearst, I started to get really intrigued by the difference. Certainly, the biggest difference was between Kane's mistress, Susan Alexander, and Marion Davies. By Wells' own admission, Citizen Kane's biggest misstep was in making Alexander a no-talent gold digger, while Davies was praised by critics and audiences as a lively and charming silent movie star and comedian. The Cat's Meow portrays Hearst and Davies as they truly were, a couple who stayed together out of mutual love and respect despite their 35-year age difference in his marriage to another woman. For Edward Herrmann, an actor who's played a variety of real-life greats, from Franklin Delano Roosevelt to Lou Gehrig to Nelson Rockefeller, it was a chance to get their relationship right. This film shows Hearst as a human being and vulnerable, he says. That's what she loved about him. His portrayal of Hearst is that of a middle-aged, socially awkward, gentle giant, a far cry from the macho, swaggering tycoon that a 24-year-old Wells had conjured. But though the film may get the details of their relationship right, the ill-fated weekend aboard the Juanita is pure conjecture. For historian David Nassau, author of The Chief, The Life of William Randolph Hearst, this kind of playing fast and loose with the facts is infuriating. Though Nassau hasn't seen the film, it doesn't hold any interest for him. It makes my skin crawl, he said. It's not blending fact and fiction, it's saying things they know to be untrue. You can't libel the dead, but you can libel history. Interesting.
Huh. Is that a legal opinion, or is that just him saying something?
That's a fascinating take on it. We work so damn hard to teach students the difference between history and myth, and Hollywood forgets it all, and we end up battling images. Film carries with it the presumption of reality. I think that's why a lot of people got upset over A Beautiful Mind. It carries with it the notion that this is what happened. In Nassau's book, the Juanita scandal is blamed on rumors spread by one of Hearst's executive at Cosmopolitan magazine, Dr. Daniel Carson Goodman, who was on the yacht. That's who he blames. Nassau contends that Hearst covered up that Ince was on the yacht not to hide his murder, but to stop the press and police from investigating the illegal consumption of champagne. This was, of course, during Prohibition. Rex Banner was there to put a stop to it. And because Ince had brought his alleged mistress with him. Yet there's much debate, even among historians. In Tramp, a biography of Chaplin, author Joyce Milton describes several inconsistencies among accounts of Ince's death. She suggests that it is plausible a shooting occurred, and even surmises that it may have been Chaplin who pulled the trigger.
Okay, well now we're off the rails here. Alternate ending.
By his own account, Chaplin was almost suicidal about his impending shotgun wedding to 16-year-old Lita Gray. Lore has it that he could have accidentally killed Ince while playing with a .38 caliber revolver, the bullet passing through a plywood partition into Ince's cabin.
Now that's a Chaplin short.
It's a silent film, so the text
Bang.
card. Oh no! Yeah, bang. Yeah, it says bang. This kind of hearsay is key to understanding the early days of Hollywood, according to film historian Richard Scheckel, author of biographies of early cinema legends D.W. Griffith and Douglas Fairbanks. You're going to get into more trouble doing a movie about John Nash than doing William Randolph Hearst, he says. I read and reviewed Nassau's biography of Hearst, and it would have been entirely out of Hearst's character to do anything violent. But I think the important thing about Hollywood history is that it's very much an oral history. It's not a written down history. That's exactly what we were just talking about a minute ago. The documentation that would satisfy a historian of, say, the Civil War simply isn't present. It was such a fly-by-night operation in those days that people will concede, who can really know what happened? Besides, there's something about real frogs and imagery in imaginary gardens that's kind of mythical and entertaining.
Okay, come on. I mean, I know it was like the 1920s, but the idea of like some dude dies and you're like, oh, well, I guess we'll never know what happened.
Welcome to the picture, sweetheart.
Yeah.
It's the myth makers involved who have kept the story of the Juanita alive for 78 years. In 1981, Patty Barham, daughter of Hearst employed publisher Frank Barham, did her own investigation in Los Angeles Magazine, despite her father's stern disapproval. In 1996, Patricia Hearst wrote her novel Murder at San Simon, retelling the story of Einz's death aboard her grandfather's yacht. Two of Einz's cousins appeared on an E! Mysteries and Scandals episode about the incident, supporting the foul play theory, although Einz's granddaughter, Nancy Einz Probert, vehemently denies it. Paris hopes the continuing controversy will entice curious audiences to the Cat's Meow the same way the legend attracted to him. Got some bad news for you, brother. To me, it was just a story that was always going to cause a lot of debate, he says. There's no smoking gun, just the smell of smoke in every room. That's an awesome lead-in for the weekend the movie came out. Like, that last paragraph there is fantastic. But
sadly, America had other plans. They had other pictures to see. I think it's funny that they keep bringing up A Beautiful Mind during that article and that whole conversation.
That year for Best Picture?
I think it won, and but also I remember the criticism and saying that it was distorting the truth. Like basically Nash was a lot less sympathetic than the movie paints him to be, and the relationship with his wife is a lot more complicated, and so on. I mean, I don't know. It's on one hand you just go, it's a movie. On the other hand, you're like, well, that person's still alive.
Yeah.
So. I don't know. I'll tell you, I'm more likely to rewatch The Cat's Meow than I am to rewatch A Beautiful Mind, for what that's worth. So
fair.
But that's it. You should watch The Cat's Meow. It's on Tubi right now. I don't know if it'll still be on Tubi by the time that we release this, but if it isn't, just look it up. Unlike other Bogdanov films, this one's pretty easy to find and pretty easy to consume, so to speak.
And to confirm, yeah, A Beautiful Mind had won the Academy Award for Best Picture about 3 weeks before this article was released.
Oh, well, there you go. It stung. Everybody it was the Green Book. It was just pissing everybody off. But anyway, no Oscars for The Cat's Meow. Just all it had to be happy about was its fresh Rotten Tomatoes score, which I'm sure Bogdanovich was thrilled about.
Yeah. He might have gone to his grave not knowing what the fuck Rotten Tomatoes was, and God bless him for it.
Yes. All right, well, that was The Cat's Meow. Coming up next, our last Peter Bogdanovich movie on the main feed. It's also the last movie he ever made, for theaters at least. And we will be covering it and just kind of giving a full big picture look at this journey, this summer journey. What is that called, Alex? I don't know how she does it.
She's funny that way.
She's funny that way. A Peter Bogdanov film.
Both starring Sarah Jessica Parker.
Yes.
I'm just kidding. One of them's not.
Tatum O'Neal. It's in that one. But before we get there, we have another PJ party, and that is going to be our penultimate PJ party, starring Isla Fisher, Confessions of a Shopaholic. Is this where PJ Hogan bounces back after an almost non-existent distribution deal with I will never get this title right. Unlimited Love. Unconditional
Love.
Yes. That one
Unlimited.
Barely got released, and then Peter Pan bombed. So they're like, all right, here you go. This is a popular book. Give it the old PJ Hogan magic spin.
Off to the races.
Yeah, it's on Disney Plus. So really, you have no excuse not to watch it, because we are going to watch it for the first time. And then, well, it's rotten, so we'll say really nice things about it on the show. But that's it. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching, and we'll talk to you again soon.